out there.
Yeah.
But I said, just keep going.
Yeah.
Shit happens.
Yeah.
If you quit, it's harder to get the momentum back again.
And you've got to get a job anyway, you know. And
That's
it's
the
like,
worst.
and you've got to work. If you've got a job, you've got to work 95% of what you do anyway. So you're only working extra 5% for all the gain.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Right, so we'll just let's just stop because you've got some real good stuff there. So I'll just keep this on now to get the volume. The volume's fine.
Right? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're fine, absolutely fine. So I'm gonna. That's making me fine. I'll put that volume a bit. So right, let's go. Hi Neville, welcome to the podcast. Pleasure to have you on.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
Beautiful settings. Yes, beautiful settings. The sun's out. I'm looking over your view and it's absolutely amazing. Doesn't feel like we're in the UK.
I wake up every morning, whether it's winter or summer, and I look out on the view over the bridge and the fields, and it's like being on holiday.
Yeah,
That's
definitely amazing. It's taken me back over looking out there. I'd love to be here. But look, we're going to start the podcast. Just tell the audience a bit about yourself, and then what we're going to do, we're going to go into your past, your history, and then probably come back round circle, and then the audience got a full circle of your journey.
okay. We started in business in 1974. We were, when I say we, it's Marilyn, my wife, and we started in 1974 when we was 24 years old. And I've always wanted to go into business, but never dared to, because I had a job. I had 17 jobs actually, because I wasn't very good at most things, and I had dyslexia. I still have, and I suppose when you get a job and you're dyslexic, and in 1974 you wasn't dyslexic, you were dumb.
Yeah.
So therefore, when people found out that you couldn't read or write, you was classed as dumb, and then you run away. So you run to the next job, and the next one, and the next one. Just learning little bits, but never learning the whole job, but learning bits. And so therefore, there was a recession in 73, and I hadn't got a job. I was out of work again, and I must say, I never was ever out of work. I would go from one job in the morning to a job in the afternoon. So there was never a time when I was out of work, only this one time in 1973, and when there was about 1 million people unemployed, and I was on the dole for about 3 months. So I lived in a 10-foot caravan with my wife and my eldest daughter, who was 3 at the time, and we lived through 73, 74 in this 10-foot caravan in the snow and on what was like a building site, and so I'd got nothing to lose. Yeah. I was at rock bottom, so there was nothing coming in, only some dole money, and that's what made us go self-employed, because what could happen, you know, it's so that was the motivation. It was. And then I started as a window cleaner, because that was probably the only skill set I'd got. Muhammad Ali was a mentor of mine. Right. You know, the things he said, although he was the greatest boxer, I remember him having an interview with somebody, and he said, like, Ali, if you wasn't a boxer, world champion boxer, what would you be? Yeah. And he said, I could be anything I want. I'd be the champion dustbin collector of the world. And he was like speaking to me, you know, if he would lower himself, well, I thought at that time, if he would lower himself from the champion boxer of the world to dustbin collector, then what's wrong with that? Yeah. And if that's the case, I can do it. You know, I can be the champion of the world window cleaner. Right. You know, it's like it's all in the mind. Yes. So it's the mindset. Yeah. So this is why I've done the book, and this is why I do the podcast and things like this, to say to people who are going into business or are in business and having a little bit of a problem, don't give up. Yeah. Because you can get through it, and what else would you do in life? You know, you've got to get a job, so you might as well work for yourself if you want to.
Yeah.
So anyway, we grew the business and just kept growing the business, and still have got that property business today.
Yeah.
Well, it turned into a property business because every day changes, and the window cleaning went to maintenance, went to property maintenance for other people, then property maintenance for ourselves, and so on.
So just going back to when it first started.
I know I rattle on.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's fine. So I want to try. So going back when you started, so going back to school, were you always an entrepreneur? Did you always have this skill? Because when I was younger, I was selling car stereos. I had a bit of entrepreneurship inside me anyway. Did you have that when you started off going back at school?
Yes, I did. I was always wanting to earn money, like with picking up bottles from the tip or out of the streets, because in those days you could get a few pennies taking bottles back. So I used to take the bottles home if I found them on the tip, and wash them and then take them back to the shop, and then I used to run errands for people, always like cleaning their snow and off their path, and just generally wanting to earn some pocket money, like collecting newspapers and selling the newspapers by, I think it was by the hundredweight in those days. You know, it'd be lucky to get a ton, but it'd be just a few shillings for doing that. So I was always motivated to earn money. Yeah.
And your parents, were they working class? How did
they were, very, very much so. My father was a carpenter, very skilled carpenter and joiner, and he really motivated me to be self-employed. He really taught me to be self-employed in the mind, because after the war, Second World War, he was very lucky. He'd already got a job before the war, and they kept it open for him. So although he had a very tough upbringing and a very hard life, once he got a job in the electricity board, that they kept that job open for him, and that was the worst possible thing could have happened, because if it had come from the war, with his knowledge, he should have gone self-employed, but he opted for what he said was the safe option. Then, throughout his life, he used to say to me, I remember when I was 4 and growing up, he used to say to me, I should have gone in business with this guy who had got a furniture shop in Peterborough, and he used to point out this furniture shop as we went by it, and he used to say, I would have put new furniture in the front window, and I would have done second-hand furniture up and put it in the side windows. And he always said, I should, and that's one of the things I say in my book, and it's I always said, I never ever will say I should have. I always will do it, but saying it and doing it is two completely different things. But it's going into business. I describe it as like on the highest diving board you can find, with the coldest swimming pool. You're never ever going to jump in, because you can feel that cold. You've got that fear of the height. But if somebody pushes you, you've got no choice. You fall in. But once you're in, then it becomes all right.
Yeah, that's interesting about regret, because that looks at age 4. Your dad, your father was saying, "I wish I could have," kind of thing. Because Gary Vee talks about regret is quite a big influencer, and my friend's got quite a few care homes. So I asked him the question. I said, "Look, in your care homes, when you talk these old people, or coming towards the end of their life, what's the biggest thing?" And it's regret. I should have. So you already at age of 4, you thought, "I'm not going to go through business thinking I should have." You're going to go and do it.
Yes.
That's a good thing you exposed that very early on, and that's the message you want to give to the younger audience. Look, don't have no regret.
Yes, because you could. What's the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah.
You can start again and again and again. And in business, you do. You reinvent yourself over and over and over again, and you have these problems, and you go forward. you have to in life, when you hit these problems, you have to go backwards very often to go forwards, and some people can't do it. I've used the word can't because I don't normally use that word can't, but some people can't do it because I'll give you one example, and it's just a tiny example. We used to, when we was in business and we was doing well, we used to get 2 brand new Mercedes every year. Well, I needed some money one day, and I'd not long had the Mercedes renewed, so I went to the Ford garage and I sold these Mercedes cars, and they give me £19,000 in cash. I mean, this was a long time ago when £19,000 was a lot of money. You could buy a Mercedes car brand new for about £8,000 in those days, and they give me £19,000 cash, like in a cheque, you know what I mean. And I came out with 2 Ford cars on HP. So friends of mine said, I don't know how you can lower yourself, because we lived in a mansion at the time, and it was absolutely brilliant, and I don't know how you could lower yourself to do that. I couldn't, they were saying. I go, well, what's the difference? You know, you've got 4 wheels, you go A to B. I'm not ashamed. You know, my business needed the money. And then we was in a time when we desperately needed that money, but within a year, I bought myself a 911 Porsche Turbo, £72,000 cash. So going backwards means you can go forwards at a much better rate. You know, you've never seen a footballer or a cricketer or a pole vaulter or somebody just stand there and kick the ball or throw the ball. They always take a step back, don't they?
Yeah, they
and
do.
they take a run up. Like, you never go to somebody who's a pole vaulter and say, well, jump over that 18-foot high bar. They'll go, I will, if I have like 50 yards to run. So what I'm saying is go backward. Don't be afraid to go backwards in life. Sell what you've got. At one time, we sold all of our furniture. We sold our greenhouse. I sold my motor scooter. I sold everything because I needed the money. Another time, I sold the house, a £2 million house. I sold one day, and I went and lived in my office for 2.5 years. This was in 2009. So, and that's when we'd been millionaires since 1984, something like that. So never be afraid to go backwards, because you can save your business and make an awful lot of money. Because 2 years later, 3 years later, I got 70 million for that business.
And it's the ego thing, isn't it? It's the letting go of that ego, because going forward there's a bigger opportunity. You know,
I've got no ego.
So that's the best thing. A lot of people
I don't probably understand it, because there's a lot of words I don't understand. I can't describe.
So you know, when people tend to, like you said, you know, why would you go and purchase? You take a step backwards, and people buy into that, and they don't go backwards. They think, oh, I don't want to go there. But you made the decision to do that, and look where you are today.
In 1982, when we bought the biggest, the best, the most expensive house for cash around here, this was in Stamford, Lincolnshire. It was a recession, and the people that I bought it from a bank in the end, but I was going to buy it from the owners a couple of weeks beforehand, and then they went bankrupt. They stopped in the house too long. A fabulous house, and they went bankrupt because they couldn't go backwards. But of course they lost everything, unfortunately. I felt like when I bought it, I felt like I'd like to give them the house. I mean, 8 years before that, we'd lived in a caravan. And again, you know, in 2008, that house, I had to sell it, and sell it quick to survive. But I remembered the people who sold it to me, they had waited too long. And so they lost everything. So you hear people saying, I'm not risking my house. Well, you are risking your house, because very often people wait too long and they lose everything.
It's timing. And when we sold our recruitment agency, people thought I was mad. But I knew the timing was there. You can prejudge it in business. You know when margins are getting smaller, you know the market's going to change, and it's making that decision at the right time can either make or break you. And I know agencies have gone under now, so I think it's important. So you've talked about your early years. So you mentioned a job. So you went to college and you kind of finished and went to a job.
A dyslexic doesn't go to college. Well, it probably does nowadays because they recognise the problem and they understand that there is ways to help them. But the best thing for me, and I'm only talking about myself, but I do see it in other children, that they are not made for the system. And so no, I didn't go to college. I did go to school as little as possible, because when you are dyslexic, they gave me a pair of glasses when I was 5, not because I needed glasses, because I said I couldn't read the blackboard.
Yeah.
When they wrote on this board, every time I blinked my eyes, the letters of these words changed places. And I couldn't understand how the kids in my class, how they could decipher where to put these, how to make the words up. And so therefore they sent me to the school doctor. He gave me some glasses, and in 1955, 56, if you had glasses, because I was the only kid in the class that had glasses, then they start 4 eyes, specky eyes, goggle, all that kind of stuff. Then they start punching you, and because you are the, and then you become the class clown or whatever, and then it's just dreadful. And then the teacher gets onto you because you're fighting back, and then you're put in the corner, and then you're dunce, your nose is touching the corner of the classroom, and you stood there and people throw stuff at. So you don't want to be there. So they don't encourage you to be at school. They encourage people to be truants.
Yeah.
So the system encourages you, the teachers encourage you to be a truant by disciplining you, because they don't understand what the root problem is.
Yeah.
And I couldn't explain, so therefore, every chance you run away and they bring you back.
Do you think that's a bit of a skill? Because academically, even though I went to university, I was not clever. I just kind of help me kind of learn a way of getting around the system. And you look at Richard Branson, you look at yourself, very successful. Maybe, I don't know, I think maybe because we're not so engaged with education, that kind of forces you to think out the box a little bit and become a business guy. And do you know what I mean? It's like, you kind of, what else can you do? Because academically you're going to struggle to keep up with the high flyers. I'm trying to think, is there a pattern there where if you have these kind of dyslexia, you can use that as an advantage as well? It
is an advantage. The government and big business need people to go into education. So they funnel people into education. They say that's the law. But why do we need education in the way they're doing it at the moment? People need to learn things, get skills in life. But we're fed into this system and they churn people out. I went to school when I was 4 or 5, 1954, 55, and that was, I say I was being trained to be gun fodder for the next war, because they'd had 2 world wars, and I was being trained for the next war, just gun fodder, because they're churning people out, because factories need people, and they still need people. So this is why I feel the education system is to get you to go somewhere every day, to teach you to be subservient, to be there in a place every day for 8 hours or whatever it may be. So when you leave school and you get a job, you're there for 8 hours a day. And that's what you do until you are whatever, I don't know what it is, 65 I think, and then you retire. So I retired out of mainstream employment of going somewhere for 8 hours a day, I retired when I was 24. So because I ask people, what is retirement? They go, well, doing what you want to do when you want to do it. Well, I had to do it, but in my mindset, it was doing what I want to do when I wanted to do it. And so I retired at 24. So I was free in my mind. I hadn't got this goal of when I'm 65, I'll be all right, and I'll retire on whatever you get. You know.
There's a different type of freedom, because I've just done a podcast. It's going to go out Friday. Basically, we talk about the why of going into business, and you can be free working. Like I work 18 hours today, but I still feel like I'm free. Whereas
You are.
if you work 8 hours in an accountancy firm where you're there told what to do, it feels like you're controlled.
Yes.
It's different type of freedom. Freedom is not sitting here just relaxing. You can still work.
Yeah.
It's having the shackles off.
Yeah, but it's I had 120 people working kiddie care, and I can guarantee those 120 people wanted to work in kiddie care. They didn't want the responsibility of being self-employed. They didn't want the responsibility of being the boss, but they wanted the responsibility of being free to do what they wanted to do in the company. And so if you place the people in their skill set on what they want to do, you've got a much better workforce. And that's what we did in kiddie care. We found what people wanted to do, what they was good at, and what they was passionate about, and then we put them into those jobs. So if people was passionate about serving people, but they didn't want to serve them face to face, we would put them in the service department on the phones, or mending prams and pushchairs, or photography. If they like photography, they would go into the photography studio, and they'd be allowed to set it up and do what they want and buy their own equipment, and so that gives them freedom, like being self-employed, but with not all the garbage that goes along with it, with the tax system and the rules and regulations. So we took care of that.
Yeah.
So there were free people doing what they wanted to do, loving the job, but they hadn't got the responsibility that we had, and they didn't want it. And so the two fitted together really nicely. So it can be done.
Yeah, and I love the way you say that, because obviously in recruitment I've recruited thousands of people. I just had a conversation with a guy who's recruiting for his letting agency, and he goes having so many people going in and out, and he said, can you help me? And I said, look, what you need to do is look at your environment. Why are they leaving? It's not getting more people in. And the way you've said that, if more employees thought like that, they'd probably have a less churn rate and a better workforce.
What we found is in retail, people who are out of work generally will go for a service industry like hotel, restaurant, things like that, and retail as a stopgap, because a lot of people don't class it as a permanent job. They class it as a stopgap. So we had thousands and thousands of people over 30 odd years who would come to us, and there were square pegs trying to get into round holes. Why do you want to come here? Why do you want to work here? And they go for £8 an hour or £10 an hour or whatever it was, £4 an hour in those 30 years ago. So they would want to come for the money and not for the job. So we had a training program, because we believe to train somebody in retail it takes 2 years to really train them properly. So lots of them would stop for a couple of hours and say it's not for me, or a day or a week, and then they would go, because we didn't mind that, because we was trying to find the round pegs for the round holes. And when people got into the job, maybe because they couldn't find another one, because there was always looking, then they started to enjoy it, started to like it, taking responsibility. And once they started taking responsibility, then they stayed. So we didn't mind how many people came through the doors, as long as they found what they wanted in life. because I used to say to people the day they joined, if possible, welcome to our business, and just remember when you leave, and they look at me shocked and go, I've only just started, I'm not leaving. Go, no, listen, when you leave, whether it's in a week's time or 10 years, take more with you, more knowledge with you when you go than what you've come with today. And if you take more knowledge with you, then I'll have done my job properly, the managers will have done their job properly, and you will have learned something. So I don't want you here not learning, and I don't want you here 10 years with 1 year's knowledge. I want you here with 10 years knowledge. So make sure you learn something and go away from the job. If you do leave, that's fine. Go away with more knowledge, and then I'll be happy.
Yeah.
And that relaxed people. That made them feel comfortable.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And so I want to take you back because I know where you're going. So
digressing.
When you were 24 years old. So let's say there's entrepreneurs listening to this now.
Yes.
You know, you've had so much success. So at 24.
Yes.
I know you touched on it previously. You made that decision. So what were you doing at 24? So you're working. What job were you doing?
Right. Well, I worked for the Ministry of Defence on a fuel depot that we was just waiting for war.
Oh, okay.
And this had been from the previous war. And what happened was we was looking after millions and millions of gallons of aircraft fuel. So it's really like security and maintenance. And we had to be there. And any time, if there was a war, that we'd start pumping the fuel to aircraft bases. So you don't have fuel on aircraft bases. In a war, that's the first place they'd blow up. But so you have these underground million-gallon tanks, lots of them, underground, away from any aircraft base. So that's where I was, and the recession came, and these were really being made redundant because it was old hat. They'd been there since the last war. The tanks were rotting away, and really it was a dreadful place to work. It was so there was nothing to do really. So anyway, I got made redundant. I didn't get any redundancy because I hadn't been there long enough, and that was it. I was on the dole for 3 months, and I hated it, and I just wanted another job, but there wasn't any about. There's over 1 million unemployed, and who are you going to take? Somebody who can read or write, or somebody who can't? I've got no chance. So therefore, we thought we would look after ourselves. We got to really, because we was hungry, and not getting enough money on the dole. And so we thought, what can we do? And we talked ourselves in and talked ourselves out of every conceivable job or every conceivable business. And there was 2 reasons why we didn't take all of these options. Was because 1, we had no money, and 2, we had no skill. And then one day, it was staring us in the face. Everybody's got windows, you know, and they want them cleaning. And I'd spoke to a chap a few years before who I used to work with when I was on shift work, and he had ladders on his car, and I said, what do you do? And he goes, I'm a window cleaner. I said, how do you do that? And he says, well, I've got this thing called a bit of scrim. It's a scrim, yard of scrim, and I bought a yard of scrim. It was 37 pence. And you just put a little bit of fairy liquid in the water, just a tiny spot. That's a magic ingredient, and you wash your windows, and you shake it out, and it dries, and then you dry the window off, and that's what you do. And I thought I could do that. So I one day bought myself this piece of scrim, borrowed my father's ladder, and 26th of September 1974, knocked on the next door neighbours, and I said, I'm a window cleaner now, and would you like to clean? No, I wouldn't, and slammed the door in my face. Now, I couldn't understand why, because I was offering a service, but they could see us next to their back garden in a caravan, in a tip. You know, it's like it was, I got a house and I thought I was a builder. I could pull it apart. I took the windows out, took the plumbing out, took the electric out, I took the roof off, but I couldn't put it back together again. One, I had no money, and two, I had no skill. Yeah. And so we lived in a caravan, in this tip. Yeah. And I must have brought the price of the houses down around me. You know, so anyway, they slammed the door, and I went to the next house and the next and the next, and started this window cleaning, what I thought at the time was a window cleaning round. But I soon realised it was a round has got a ceiling to the amount of money you can earn. If you do 20 houses a day at 50 pence a house, then it's whatever, £10, and you've got to have 100 houses if it's a fortnight, 150 if it's 3 weeks, but there's always a ceiling on what you can earn. So I realised it wasn't a window cleaning round I wanted, it was a window cleaning business. And what's window cleaning if it isn't property maintenance? So the book is called The Answer is Yes, No, What is a Question? Because after about a week, I would go or fortnight, I'd go to the house again to clean the windows, and they would say, Neville, can you clean the gutters out? And I'd go, yes. And I needed to get more money, I needed to get more skill, I needed to eat, so therefore I would never say no. And then it got to the point of people going, Neville, do you? And I say, yeah. And they say, I haven't asked the question yet. I say, I'll do anything you want me to do. So mending fences, cleaning drains, you know, putting window panes in, cracked windows, you know. And it was like, the answer is yes, now what's the question? That's where the book, that's where the title of the book come from, you know, about the second week of being in business, through desperation. And I learned, I didn't realise in the 17 jobs how much I had actually learned, but I couldn't put it all together and create a business in my head. It came kind of naturally when somebody said, can you mend a fence? And I thought, yeah, well, I was with this guy and we mended a fence. So I learned how to dig a hole and put a post in. So I'd already learned that, but it didn't, when I was looking for a job, when I was looking for a business, didn't click with me that I could be a fencer. It never dawned on me until these jobs came along, and I'd had a little bit of knowledge on lots and lots of things. So that's how we created the business. Every day was different. Every day I didn't know what we would be doing. It was, and I still don't really.
So how did that? So you started the window. It's a fascinating story. So how do you scale that up? So you just do maintenance and?
Oh well, it was quite easy really, because you want to work as many hours as possible because you need to eat, you need to pay your bills, and you need to, you know. So each day I would work the maximum amount I could and be looking for work all the time, and usually it was from word of mouth. The next door neighbour would have a job for me and so on, and then I needed two hands. Well, Marilyn hadn't got a job and she was at home with the baby, so after a few weeks of me being on my own, we were getting enough money then to put our daughter Elaine into a play school, because in those days every street had somebody who had taken kids. You know, you didn't need any regulations or whatever. So she went to a place in Vere Road in Peterborough. We used to call her Auntie Pearl, and Auntie Pearl had a dozen kids every day in her back garden. So Elaine went to Auntie Pearl's, and Marilyn was able to come and help me. So mixing concrete and stuff like that, and we used to put roof tiles on and all that kind of stuff, and cleaning and a bit of painting. And then my father, he come to his end of his career and started working with me. And my father-in-law was on shift work, and he was always up for a bit of extra money, and so he came to work with me, and it was all part-time when I needed them. And then my next door neighbour, who was a milkman, because I'd moved by then, my next door neighbour, who was a milkman, he had finished at 8 o'clock and he wanted extra money, so he came and worked with me. And then this is how it started.
Yeah.
So therefore, I think in those days, it was like £1 an hour that you could get people for part-time, and we could charge £1.50. You know, I'd try and do it in my head of how long this job's going to take, and I would estimate it for myself, and then I would have the others working with me. So I realised very soon that if I employed somebody for £1 an hour, and mentally I made the job that I was getting a £1.50 an hour for it, then organising the job so it's efficient, I may be getting £2 an hour from it. So then we could start employing people on a full-time basis. And we wasn't afraid to do that, because when you have had no food in your stomach and you've gone through a winter in a 10-foot caravan with a child, with no washing machine, living in a building site with mud and snow, and then you survive, and that's your standard. And I must say, I tell everybody, people used to say to me, how are you getting on in that caravan? I go, well, not too bad. Actually, we've got running water. And they go, have you really? Did you put it in? No, I didn't put it in myself. No, it's the condensation that comes down the walls every morning when we wake up. Because we've got a gas stove. You put a gas stove on for the kettle, and then all the condensation comes down. So, what I'm saying is, we never worried about having money for ourselves. The money was for the business to buy tools, to buy extra paintbrushes, to buy ladders, to buy tools, so we could do better and bigger jobs, better jobs that were better paying jobs. So the money wasn't for us, it was for the business, and we had just enough to feed ourselves. And we always would say, if anything goes wrong, we can always go back and live in the caravan, because that was a standard that we was used to. And if you can survive on next to nothing, then everything else is a bonus. You know, and you wake up in the morning, and that is a bonus that you've woke up, because there's a million people every day in the world that don't wake up in the morning, you know, and it's like they've had their last day yesterday, and so therefore you start, you know, being grateful for what you've got. And if you're grateful for what you've got, and if it's the smallest thing anyway, then it spurs you on. So, you know,
keeps you in check.
Yeah, although, you know, I went out a few years ago and I bought a Ferrari for £170,000, and you know, and it was nothing. It was nothing. But also, it only meant something for that day I bought it, because it was a beautiful car and I loved it. But I only did 1,000 miles in 3 years, and I sold it for 170,000 again, because possessions they are nice, and you buy them because it motivates you, and you can, and it spurs you on. But actually, what I'm saying is truly, you know, that's not what you do it for. You know, you go through life and you do a lot of things. I spent 280,000 one year on cars just to get me out of bed, because I was in a complacency stage, because there's so much money coming in, and you go through these complacency stages, but at the end of the day, you don't need these things, and you don't do it for that.
No, you don't. And car situation, my sort of, you know, experience was in 2008. We did really well. I bought myself an Aston Martin. I dreamed that.
Yeah.
My parents from Indian background, they were immigrants here, so we We didn't have a bedroom till I was 8 or 9, and now I've got my house, that kind of many bedrooms I want. But you learn.
Fantastic,
But
yeah.
the first thing I did in recession was 2009. It just hits you, recession.
Yes.
And the first thing I did was took my car back to Aston Martin. So I don't want it anymore
Yeah.
because in a recession you've got to get your buckle down. You've got to
Yes.
get rid of everything.
That's it.
And that taught me a lesson. Now when I see nice cars, they're great, but